increasing every day over there.
July 20th, Wednesday. And today, the presentation is going to be about black and white photography by the famous black and white photographer, Mr. Grove. Hi, Barbara.
The camera's looking nice and sharp, Barbara.
Well, I guess I found out how to do that. Just didn't know.
Hi, Alan.
Hi there.
Tom.
So,
Is Amy off or heading out someplace across the country?
Amy's in New York,
New York, okay.
upper state New York, eating ice cream.
Yeah, I
oh,
saw that.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
John, you should have been with us Friday. You had a lot of interesting pictures. I really like them.
I'd like to make some comments.
Okay.
Since several months ago, when I lost my main camera, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do. I've been using my secondary camera, which just doesn't cut the mustard. So I've kind of been looking for something that's maybe a point and shoot type thing with a zoom lens that has a decent aperture. So I went and had a long conversation with Eric at Tuttle Camera. And he basically told me that if I want to get a long zoom on a point and shoot camera with a decent lens, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to find a 10 times or 30 times zoom with a 1.8 lens. It's going to be 3.3 or 3.5 and above. So that kind of dispelled my what I was looking for. But anyways, one of the things that he told me is about a website for anybody who's a photographer who's interested in photography equipment should know about this website. It's called DP, which stands for Digital Photography Review. So dpreview.com. You can compare any camera to any other camera or lenses, anything like that. It has lots of articles on photography. It's just a well-rounded site if you're looking for anything in regards to equipment.
Okay, Alan, a couple remarks. One, with today's sensors, it's nice to have 1.8 and all of that, but f4, f5, you can go, you can shoot at much higher ISOs than you used to in the past. The second remark is I just read an article about, I can't remember exactly which camera it was, but this guy who's a pretty well-known street photographer says he uses mostly a Fuji, I forget which one, but it sounds very similar to what you're looking for. And three, I have two Nikon D750 full frames for sale because I got a new camera. So, and
what is it? Nikon what?
D750, they're full frame.
Oh, okay.
It pays to
Anyhow.
advertise.
What's that?
Pays to advertise.
Yeah, I don't want to do advertising or sales on this, but just a brief reminder. All right,
Okay.
it's 3:04. Linda's here with us. I think we're going to have a busy day today, so let's go ahead and start, Catherine and Linda, with any announcements you have.
No
I
announcement.
have a birthday announcement. Saturday will be Kenneth Green's birthday.
Hmm.
Oh,
All right.
Okay, I have two quick announcements. One, I got a message from Lisa Scott. She asked me to pass it on to everyone. Lonnie's just having a lot of problems. He just spent 5 days in the hospital. He's had, seems to almost daily have a stroke. And she says she's getting so tired. And I think it's already been posted. The Jesse
Funeral,
funeral
or celebration of life.
celebration, yeah, is going to be in August.
August 20th. I believe that's a Saturday.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then I was talking to Catherine about the Orange County Fair. I think that represents a great opportunity, or I thought it did, but it turns out they're limiting the number of people, and it's and you have to buy ahead of time, and they're sold out for a lot of dates. So,
The limit is 45,000, which is quite a bit.
Is that per day or for the whole 2 or 3 weeks?
I think it's per day.
That's a big group.
Mhm.
I know.
well, anyhow, I think it's worth, I'm going to pursue some more information and post it. So that
Okay.
information will be available. Again, not to take away from meeting time. So if that's all for announcements, I'm going to turn, as we've agreed to do on Wednesdays, is Doug's going to do a quick tip. So it's all yours, Doug.
Today's topic is going to be black and white photography. Let me get rid of this out of the way here. Okay. Black and white photography means more than just the lack of color. In a lot of ways that's defined as monochrome. Black and white photography goes beyond monochrome by emphasizing the blacks, whites, and all of the shades of gray in between. The key to successful black and white photography lies in the contrast, particularly in the black and the whites. Here's an example of the same photograph. On the far left is Abraham Lincoln. The one to our right is the crop version, then a traditional or standard black and white. And then one of the things that we can do with black and white images is actually do some tonal work within the black and white to give it more of an aged look, if you will. So there's a lot of things we can do in black and white. By removing the color from an image, it lets the viewer focus on the main visual aspect of the images, including shapes, textures, subject, and emotion. Emotion being here, I would think we have engine company number 8 down at Long Beach. They have a couple of vintage fire engines out in front. While it looks okay in color, black and white puts it in a little different perspective, thinking back 30 or 40, 50 years ago. In review, black and white photos removes any distraction from the color. This helps the viewer focus on other aspects of the photo, such as the subject, textures, shape, patterns, the actual composition, and the contrast between whites, blacks, and the shades of gray. Stephen, I turn this presentation over to you.
All right, thank you for covering those aspects of photography. And I'm going to now share screen. Hang on. Why is it not? There we go. All right. Okay, as you all know, today's presentation is going to be about black and white photography, and I'm going to cover another aspect of it other than the monochrome shades of gray. And but let me get rid of all your pictures here. Okay. And so, excuse me, what did you say? I don't know what she said. My- All right. So sorry about that interruption. To me, black and white, we've got these quotes from past times, but lately I've been thinking about music, and I've decided that I try to think of music or songs when I'm out taking pictures as an inspiration, either just to lighten my mood, or if I hear a lyric I really like, what kind of photograph could go with that? And now that I love music, but I can't play anything, I'm basically tone deaf and I have no rhythm. And so maybe that's, since I hear music in black and white, maybe that's why I like black and white photography. And doing black and white gives an opportunity to be a lot more creative. This isn't my quote, but this kind of fits along with what I'm saying is we can do many things in black and white without somebody saying, oh, did you Photoshop that? Or in a lot of my color photos, somebody will ask, is that what color it was? And for me, it may or may not be. It's even in color, I process it the way I think I see it in my mind. So now I'm going to talk, I'm kind of blending ideas here. We've been having famous photographers, and this is a photographer that was very famous for his black and white photography and has been very influential to me in how I think of black and white. He got his first camera was a Brownie, and when he was 14, his father gave him a Rolleiflex. And most of his photography was done in Hong Kong. His nickname was the Great Master. He started in Shanghai, and then he moved to Hong Kong. Now, this is one of his most, if not his most famous black and white photo. A copy of it recently sold for over $350,000, a print of it. And he's pretty good with captions and telling stories. Some people even consider it. He was shooting on the street, and it's almost narrative photography, and I kind of like that term. He practiced in narrative photography. But let's take a look at this picture. First of all, it's a lot more than just monochrome. Look how this is an example here. It draws your eye, even though the subject is quite small and down at the bottom, it kind of goes against some of the things we've talked about in composition, but look how it draws your eye to the subject. And so I'm going to give a short YouTube here
Hello, photography friends.
about
Today,
him.
I would like to talk about an iconic image, Approaching Shadow, taken by master photographer Van Gogh.
Can everyone hear that?
No,
Yeah.
I hear something like a radio or TV in the
there's
background.
a lot of background noise.
Yes.
Everybody needs to mute if you're not the speaker. I think that would help.
Yes, it would. Thank you. And let me make sure the volume is up all the way on this.
I already talked about his life and photography in my previous video, so feel free to check it out if you are more interested in Van Gogh and his life. Approaching Shadow is a photograph taken in Hong Kong in 1954. It is one of Van Gogh's most famous works. When I first saw the photograph, I thought to myself, what a beautiful composition, but also what a patient photographer who found the right spot and waited for the right time so the shadow reaches the edge of the wall. Well, it went all a little differently. But first, let's take a look at the composition. The horizontal line provides the stability of the image. Together with the vertical line, it leads your eyes to the subject. But it is the diagonal line that makes the picture. I don't think the picture wouldn't necessarily work without it, but it would be a different kind of image and definitely not that iconic. Van Gogh asked his cousin to pose at a wall at Queen's College in Causeway Bay. She's looking down, kind of like looking at the shadow that approaches her. The meaning Van Gogh wanted to create was that her youth will fade away and that everyone has the same destiny. Van Gogh said it was literally a tragic story. However, it is an art, and as an art, it is going to mean different things for different people. I use the word create and not to take the photograph because there was originally no shadow. The shadow was added later in the darkroom. There were basically two ways Van Gogh took his photographs. Inspired by Anne Cartier-Bresson, Van Gogh was just chasing the decisive moment, didn't plan it at all, or sometimes he waited hours or days for the right moment to come. As for the other way, he took, or let's say, created his images. Van Gogh was known to edit his photographs a lot, from dodging and burning all the way to photomontages. You could almost say he was an early Photoshop user. Now, I don't want to judge whether it is right or wrong. However, some purist photographers, and especially street photographers, would take that as cheating. What I think about it is that in the end, it is the artist's vision he or she presents to the viewer. It is his point of view and his art. Just like when you slap the retro filter on your photo using Instagram to change the mood. You are the artist who decides how your art is presented. What I think is potentially a problem is misleading the viewer into thinking the photograph is a candid moment when it is not. That way, you are just pretending to create something requiring skill and luck without actually having them. I think to be honest with yourself as an artist is an important step towards improving your skills. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode of Story Behind the Photograph. If you liked it,
Okay,
hello photography fans.
all right. Now, speaking of, first of all, comments on his style, and one of the reasons I like this is the black and white, to me, really gives you a license to be creative with your photo. But speaking of the approaching shadow, Mr. Foreman here is doing his best Van Gogh when he took this picture of this tower. As soon as I saw it, I thought of Van Gogh. And so I converted it to black and white with his permission. And I will, after this presentation, I'm going to destroy it because it's Stephen's work and not mine. But I just wanted to show how that whole concept can apply to your photography. Usually a lot of us would probably have cropped this to where you show the people or left it in color or whatever. But I really like how this, well, in color, you got the same thing, but it really, to me, really pops in black and white. Come on, okay. Now, another famous photograph of Van Gogh is Into the Light. And I just like that whole phrase, into the light. So this was at someone walking in some railroad lines. And now what we can do, well, he obviously did this before digital and did it in film. So it must have been a lot of work. Even if you look at the work in black and white that Ansel Adams did, it's like a tremendous number of steps and time into making the print that he wanted. And at the end of this demonstration, I'm going to show you a way to do black and white, a very simple way, in which you can accomplish in about 3 minutes what would take maybe an hour in film. So, another thing I like, and we've been talking about this, is trying to come up with a caption or a story to go with the picture. And I feel like if you post the picture, but you have no story, no caption, yeah, it's a great picture, but if you've got a little story or paragraph with it, it really helps. He was inspired by Henry Cartier-Bresson, and I still have failed to look up who he was, but maybe some of you know. This editing, dodging and burning, that's what I'm talking about. It's what we do today with Lightroom or Photoshop. And the concept of calling that cheating, I think that's all up to the individual. If you're going to be a street photographer, it's kind of your choice, and just be honest with your choice with your audience. You're either doing it in the journalistic style, in which you don't remove everything, it's just basically how you shot it. Or if you're using the street photography as a base for some creative artwork, it's okay to say that too. It's your vision. Here's let's look at some of Fan Ho's. I really like this one too. I suppose you could say rule of thirds here. I almost think he probably wasn't thinking of that. He was thinking more of the overall composition of how the image presented and the various changes in tones and story that this is telling. This is another one of his. This one I think is very clever. Just the layout, the lines, it just strikes me as a great photo. This is more like, this might be classified more as street photography. I don't think there's really any manipulation in this. Just seeing these people walk up the hills, and for those of you that have been to Hong Kong, you know it's got a lot of hills. So now let's look at some work by some of our famous photographers, which I kind of think fits the Fan Ho style. And this is one by Amy Myers. It's basically a silhouette, but it also really tells a story. And if I wish Amy was here, I don't remember her exact story, but this was kind of like a candid moment she caught without any posing. This is another one took by Amy. There's no people in it, but I really like how this flows. Oh, come on. And then this one by Lawrence. Lawrence isn't with us today, but again, this is another great example of converting a color to black and white. And then right along the same theme, this is, I haven't seen the color version of this, but it looks almost mystical this way. The way the clouds are emphasizing the structure. It has a timeless quality to it. You have anything you want to say about that, Doug?
It almost looks like it was taken at night with a long exposure, doesn't it?
Well, it is a long exposure. I had some neutral density filters on it. I wanted to get the sky moving. There was a little bit of a breeze going through it.
Oh,
Oh, that worked really well. And this one too, I like the main subject is there, and then everything just it's like this mystical, magical quality of some fairy tale land to it. And then into the light, here's one that I took inside a building that had a lot of holes in the roof. And at this time, this I took in 2014. I really didn't know what I was doing, but this is what I wanted to capture, and I got lucky. And then speaking of Hong Kong, I thought, well, let me look at some of my Hong Kong pictures and which of those would kind of fit into what the Fan Ho did. But of course, with digital photography, you get a different look than you did with film, even when you convert to black and white. And so this is a picture I took on the streets in Hong Kong. And this is pure street photography. This is just what was going on. And this is another one, and I really like the expressions. The black and white on this really brings out the expressions and the way the light's hitting their face and stuff. In color, there's too much disturbance, and there's so many colors in the here and stuff, and it kind of takes away from how they're all, whatever they're thinking or doing. There's an expression in every one of those faces. So, and this is another part of Hong Kong called Havana, Cuba. And this was totally unplanned. I'm just walking along the street, and this is an example. We talk about always carry your camera and always be ready. And I think I was pretty fortunate to catch that moment, capturing the moment in black and white. And now here I'm showing, whoops, another example, which I think I just did this after a couple days ago after thinking more about Fan Ho. And this is a picture I took in, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. It's Qingdao, China, where they make Qingdao beer. And so I took the color and looked and said, what can I do with this to be really creative in black and white? Now I could have made a standard black and white, and I did that at first, and then you get a much light, not near as much darkness and stuff, but I like going into the dark here with that, because you still have this bright white where the sun is hitting that. This picture is almost black and white, even in color, but it's a T6 trainer, which the T6 trainer means a lot to me because it's probably one of the first planes that my dad flew. He ended up as an instructor for P-40s in World War II. But the way the sun was hitting this and the reflections, I think this just makes a very dramatic black and white. The only difficulty with this picture was the windows here, and there was a lot of things going on in color. And I played around with just blacking it out completely or just leaving a little bit of it there. And I eventually decided to just fade that out. You can still see that it's inside in those windows, but they're not distracting from the photo. And this one I took in Placentia, where there's a place you can stand overlooking at the railroad track. And I walked around a lot to find where I could take this picture, and then I had to wait for a train. And I think I like the way I composed this, the way the tracks, come back here, the tracks and so forth. Now, the sky was crap. This is where I was creative. I did a sky replacement, and I experimented with quite a few skies before I found one that I felt blended well with the picture. So what I'm asking you to do is to think in black and white. A lot of times when I take a picture, a photograph, not always, but like the one I used at the very beginning with the girl standing there with her back to the camera, as soon as I saw that, I knew I was going to do it in black and white. Same thing with this gentleman who I found on the streets of Orange. No, it's something in a museum. I can't remember what it is, but made it interesting, black and white. So I put these links here to Fanho, but there's a lot of videos, a lot of YouTube videos about him. It just Google Fanho, there's many sites. He was very inspirational to a lot of people. Also, I belong to the Club of Black and White. It's a Facebook group. And again, you don't have to remember all of this. You can just Google Club of Black and White. Now it is, you can view it, but it's a private group and you can ask to join, and then you have to answer some questions and so forth. And if they like your answers, they'll let you be a member.
Can we name drop your name?
That won't help much, although a couple of times I've had the photo of the month, but so our challenge this week is going to be to post you a black and white picture, some black and white pictures on the Facebook page. And so I want to encourage you to think about this narrative photography concept. Try to find a picture that tells a story. Like for example, I think this pretty much tells a story. Here's he's leaning on the rock. She's talking on her cell phone. And so now the color one is okay, but by doing this in black and white, I was able to put a gradient across here to emphasize that the sun was coming from the right. And we all have problems with this thing being so jumpy on Zoom. I also did a gradient up here just to keep away the distraction back here, but I didn't want to cut it out because to show that it is on the ocean. This was, again, and it happens to be just by coincidence in Qingdao, China. And this area is a very popular beach. There's tons of people hanging out at the beach. It's also almost looked like it's Bavaria, Germany, because it was originally settled by Germans. And there's a lot of structure and houses and stuff that have that German look to them. And it was the Germans that started the brewery that's now the Chinese brewery. And it's also a popular spot for a lot of weddings. As I walked to this area, there were people preparing to have their wedding photographer shot and their wedding photos. And the way that they do it different in China than we do it here. They pose and take their wedding photographs before the wedding. And then when they have the wedding, everyone can see the photos. It kind of takes the hassle out of having a wedding and then everyone running off to take photos. So we can thank Amy for this. Be creative, be one with the mouse. And now I'm going to temporarily, I'm going to go back to sharing, and I want to show you here. Here is a picture in color. I think we can all agree this is a colorful picture. It's got reds, it's got browns, it's got blues, it's got greens, and there's nothing wrong with this picture in color, but it's a good one to use to illustrate converting to black and white. And this, can everyone see for sure the panel over here This is always a problem in Zoom. You know, you can drag that thing around that has, so it's out of the way. And so you see here where it says color or black and white on the right panel.
Yes.
Okay, now if I hit black and white, all right, I just converted it to black and white. But what if I want to do more? Well, when you do that, you get a panel here called black and white. Now, in the black and white film days and the film days, people would put if they're doing landscape, they would put a red filter on, or when, as Doug explained, how they're monochrome pictures, but each color converts different to a different shade of gray than other colors. They all have, and their intensity or luminosity, all saturation, all affect the conversion process. So let's look at reds here. I can increase the reds. Look what happened to the picture. I mean, it's like adding a red, or I can go the other way. So I can say, I'm just going to pick some settings here to show, okay, everybody remember what it looks like now. This is the straight conversion. And I think I like it just a little bit to the, oh, come on. Maybe just a little bit there. Okay, and then orange. I'm just going
The
to.
red slider slid all the way to the left there, Stephen.
What's that?
Your red slider went all the way to the left on you.
Yeah, thank you. I see that now. All right. Now the yellows, that kind of brightens it up. That looks horrible. Let's just get a little bit more on the bright side. Now remember, there's a lot of green in the picture. And we can black it out completely. And I think it's okay about where it is. Aqua doesn't have much effect. Just a little bit on his pants there, you can see it changing. The blue will have a big effect. So about there. I don't think purple, you see a little bit in some of the leaves on the left. And magenta, same thing. So now the next thing you can do is you can give it a little, it's black and white, but you can give it a little bit of tinting here, like that. It's still black and white, and I kind of like that. I don't want to go overboard with it. That was just with the midtones. I mean, that's just, I think, going way overboard by changing that or the highlights. Or you could just try for extremes. You could go blue. Again, that's up to you, the artist. But for me, I kind of like the way this looked. So let's turn this other panel back on. History. This is where we ended up. This is where we started. Let's go back to, okay. Oh, wait a minute. That's way before. Here's where we started today. Okay, sorry. This history goes all the way back to when I first brought it into the camera. Oh, by the way, so this is how it's originally shot. This is the original out of the camera. So, and you can see, this is how I cropped it. And then we go all the way up to where we are here. So this is here's the convert to black and white. And here's what we ended up with. This subtle difference, but I use the same process with the black and white that I made of Stephen Foreman's, but I went really extreme on these settings over here that make things black, but I want it black, so forth. Any questions about this easy conversion to black and white?
No.
You can make, I have a book, and of course I can't hold it up and show it to you, called, it's You're Not in Kansas Anymore. It's written by a very well written book about black and white photography, but it was written in the film days. And it's the subtitle is 100 Methods for Creating a Black and White. And we just reduced those 100 methods to 3 minutes of work with digital and Lightroom.
Steve,
Yes,
now that you've finished with your dolls, how do you save that?
well, it's not a matter, it's, see the history here?
Uh-huh.
Lightroom saves the original. This is what is saved.
Yeah,
But if I go here and I hit export, it will export a JPEG, which will be another stored image in the folder, the same, well, in this case, in the same folder as the original, or I could select a specific folder. Like the last time I did this, somebody wanted some bird pictures, so I created a folder called Sam Bird. Okay. But
so you're saying it'll export a black and white,
yes, I export the black and white.
right?
So, and then the original I save it to the same folder that Lightroom created and guided. It's not in Lightroom, it's in Finder or Explorer,
Mhm.
in the folder that was organized according to my instructions. And then I keep all the originals in the main folder, and then I create subfolders with the JPEG.
Mhm.
And if since this one already has the file name in color saved, I click rename to add a number after it, so that otherwise it's going to try and replace that.
Yeah.
Or you could not do that. You don't have to do it that way. Or it's going to say to you, a file with this name already exists. Do you want to create a unique name? And you can do that. Now, again, on this settings here, because 99% of the time now, I haven't printed a picture in a long time. Since we're doing this on the internet and so forth, I just set the long edge at 2400 pixels and the resolution at 300. And that's more than enough for Facebook or sharing or slideshows. And it makes for a smaller file than if I didn't put a limit on that. And then I always sharpen for screen. So now if I hit export on this, I think, okay, so now that I've done that, I can just right click, go to folder and library. Here it is. And I told it to go into this subfolder. See, my main folder is by date and then the subject. So if I just go down here, there is the saved JPEG. But even though it's the saved JPEG, whoops, stay with me. I could go ahead and hit develop and look at the history. Oh, well, because I'm in that folder, it's just going to show that I imported it. So I go back to show in folder and library, and I just go up a folder I can find the black and white here. And let's say, okay, I did my conversion. I've got the black and white saved as a JPEG, but I've decided, you know what? I want to print this in color, do some color work with it. So I just simply go over here, I change it back to develop. And I could just hit reset and start everything over, but I don't really need to do that. I could just go back here. And then I could start creating a new history. Or I could create a virtual copy, copy one, and work with that if I really want to keep them separate. So I go to folder and library. And you'll see that I've got the original and the virtual copy. I think this is the, well, it doesn't matter. One of them's a cut. So is that, everyone understand that?
Mhm.
Yes. One question.
Yes.
When you export them, do you normally export them to your internal hard drive, or can you do that with a external hard drive?
All of my pictures are in, for example, I'll just show you. I use an external hard drive for everything. So here I am. I can right click. Well, let's go back to VA Garden. That's what we're working with. I can right click and say show in Finder. If you had a PC, it'd be show in Explorer. Now, can everybody see this Finder window?
Mhm.
And down here at the bottom, if I can get zoom out of the way, let's see. And it tells me that it's in the SRG drive under Photo Warriors. And then by date, best way to do that is to just go ahead here to illustrate that. This is the external hard drive that I put all my pictures in, and I've created a folder called Photo Warrior. I can change the view here. So there's a view. I have pictures before 2010, and I keep those in another place. But these are all the years I have pictures for. So here, and then so if I go to that folder, I say I need to make a correction here, but that's okay. You can see it. Then I've got them organized by date and subject. So, and that's all on my external hard drive. It could be on my internal hard drive. I have a second external hard drive. This one's 8 terabyte, in which I back to all the backups and weird stuff. I put that all there because I try to keep my main hard drive free, so as free as possible, so I can get the best performance. You can see here, if I look at how I've got my drive set up, you can see I'm using about half of my 1 terabyte storage that's in my computer, and this 8 terabyte that I'm using for backup and other things, I've got I'm using 3 of it, and I have 5 terabyte left, so maybe 2 more years of shooting. And then the one that I use to put my pictures in. And when I travel, I don't take this backup one. I take care of that when I get back. When I travel with my laptop and this one other hard drive.
What,
And I'm using almost 3 of the, well, it says, oh, there's almost 3 terabyte available on this one. So I have a lot of space there available. And
what is that SRG means?
SRG, the S, it's a very special name. It's Stephen Richard Grove.
Oh, okay.
You can rename these drives, whatever you want to call them. But here, see, rename. Seagate desktop drive, but the only one I wanted to rename was the one I was using all the time. You want me to go over again the name, the SRG?
No, you answered it for me.
Oh, okay. Now, since we're on black and white photography, I use keywording for black and white. These will all have, let's go here to the, all these will have, you'll see them, I can find them by looking under flower or date, flowers. Well, again, I must be behind on my homework. These should all have the keyword flower, though it's easy to do. And then flowers. So I could find them under flowers. But we were talking black and white. So I use a lot of nesting. Let me go back up here. Locations. Here, black and white. I've got 1,276 black and white photos I've saved. And so now some of them appear like this one appearing twice doesn't mean I have two of them. It means it's they're keyworded in two different places. They may be keyworded in a collection or somewhere else, whatever. And speaking of Fan Ho, I took this picture in China. I didn't use this in the demo, but this first came to mind as a black and white that's, I think, would fit a Fan Ho concept. And so as you can see, I do a lot of black and white conversions. This is I don't do this very often, but I kind of like this, where I make it a total graphic. Okay, so going back to, where were we? The picture we were working on before, the color one. Well, let's just get in this. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Okay. I want to get back to processing this one. Okay, I know it's in this folder. So, does everyone now understand of, can everybody here that uses Lightroom do a very simple black and white conversion? Do you feel you can? And if you don't use Lightroom, heaven help you.
Well, Steve, a comment is you've shown me that, you know, when they had film and I used to shoot in Tri-X and print to myself, I can do now the same thing with digital photography.
Yes, you can. And that's, I knew I'd lost my train of thought, and thank you for putting me back to it. Now, you can't do that in Lightroom, but I could go to, I also have a program called Silver Effects Pro, and that one allows me to choose different film types. So that turns out to be very interesting, how the picture looks in different films. And a lot of those when I went to my black and white keywords, sometimes I look at a picture and I want to present it as though I'd shot it with Tri-X film. Well, with this program, I can do that. There are a lot of things I can do here, but I'm just going to leave that. And I'm going to go down here to film types. And I don't run by it. Let's see. A lot of choices here, trying to clear view, film types. Okay. Oops. What did I do with it? Oh, here we go, film types. All right, so we can just. Why is this giving me a hard time? Usually normally I just scroll down this. But anyhow, let's see all these different films. Here, ISO 400, Kodak Tri-X. There's what it looks like in Tri-X. This is probably this is what it looked like if you shot it in Polaroid. Fujifilm. And now this is working like I want it. Ilford. I find that some of the Fuji ones look pretty interesting. See the difference there?
Mhm.
Down to ISO 32. Which, what's the point in doing that? Of converting that, because that's a lower ISO than it was shot at. Oh, okay. So this method that I showed you, I use about three or four methods, and sometimes I do a combination. Sometimes I get it to black and white like I like with this, and then I switch to the Silver Efex Pro to look for something that I may want to do, or just to make it look like it was shot with Tri-X. And then sometimes in Photoshop. Photoshop has something similar to what Lightroom has, but I think a lot of Photoshop people would disagree with me, but I think you have more options here and more, at least easier to use. Oh, that's okay. Now we're back to, let's see. Let's get the. Okay, let's get the history here. Why? Okay, here's the black and white we ended up with. Alan, what was my chain of thought? I'm doing it, showing back to the black and white.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
in Photoshop.
okay.
In Photoshop, I think it's a lot more, and Lonnie might disagree with me because he's so sharp with Photoshop. But doing this, having this panel here, you can accomplish the same thing in Photoshop, but why not just do it here? So,
Steve, if I could interject for just a second.
yeah.
Over there on the left under presets, there's a whole section inside Lightroom for presets of black and white.
Yes, and okay, here we can. Yeah, it's actually this one looked pretty good. Renaissance, silver skin. This might be nice with people. Pure contrast, this shimmering portrait. I usually think of these as, let's go back up here. I usually think of these, if I'm not sure where I want to go, it's a starting point. Like let's pick tarnished silver. Then we go over and look here and see, oh, this is what it did. Let's move the highlights down a little. Maybe move the shadows this way. I tend to use them as a starting point and just to fine tune the look I'm looking for. Now let's see. Black and white drum. Unfortunately here, I haven't got to the ones that come with Lightroom yet. These are all the ones presets that I've bought. Oh, these are from, all right, these are the presets from Lightroom. So that's a good way. You could go, once you convert it to black and white, you can fine tune it with this, or just do it directly. Strong color, let's see. Oh, there's more color.
Yeah, now you're down there. where it
Oh,
says
here
black
we
and
go,
white.
black and white.
Yeah. Next one up.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Landscape, high contrast. Well, that looks pretty good. Punch. I don't like that. Don't like that. Infrared. Sepia. Let's go to this one. All right, so we chose punch. So now we can learn. We can go over here to our site and see what it did. It brought down the exposure to minus 0.4. It's got the highlights all the way to the left, shadows about 2/3 of the way to the right. It brought the whites up, and I think this is a good trick. When you look at the histogram, in this case, it really doesn't matter that much, but I always watch the histogram, and when I change the exposure, that's everything. So I usually never bring it all the way to where it's up like that. I usually get something like this, and then I use the whites to get, I bring the highlights way down to, and I bring the whites this way, and it's, the reason I do that is kind of like, it's a three-legged balance between highlights, exposure, and whites, and well, and blacks. I always feel as though there should be, I always set it up so I'm getting the warning on the blacks. I just like to have a deep, at least some deep blacks. Move it far enough that I get deep blacks. Again, that's just the way I do it. So it's 4:03. Let me stop sharing. And I hope you all enjoyed this presentation and got something from it. And I
Good
look
job.
forward to seeing some of your black and whites this coming week.
Okay.
And today is Wednesday. Friday. Well, you're gonna get tired of me. I think, Catherine, you're having me present
Grand Cayman.
the Grand Cayman Islands, but I'm going to make that it's a small island, so I'm going to make it a small presentation short. And then we can review some of the postings for the rest of the time.
Okay.
Don't make it too short.
Well, we'll make it appropriately short. And Linda and Catherine's going to help because Catherine has also been to Grand Cayman. So she can give all the counterpoints to what I'm saying about the Grand Cayman Islands. Anybody else been there?
Did you go to hell when you were there?
No, I did not. Maybe tell me again what it is.
It's a town. It's very touristy. It's a rock formation. And then the little town with the thing is you're supposed to buy a postcard and send it from hell.
Okay. Well, I did not go to hell. I went several places. Unfortunately, I was only there for 6 days, and there was a lot of places, even though it's a small island, there were a couple of places I didn't get to that I wanted to see. That happens a lot when you travel
Yeah.
and you have limited time. So do you have pictures, Catherine, of?
I've got a couple pictures that, like about 3 or 4, I can share.
Okay, good. All right. Well, don't be careful of the heat. Has anybody followed what's happening in Europe right now?
Yeah,
No.
and China.
Horrible, horrible. Runways are melting. The British, it's not, what are the British call their Air Force? The whatever. They can't put their fighters in the air because the runways have melted.
Oh,
RAF.
Royal.
Royal Air Force, what?
Royal Air Force.
Royal Air
Royal Air
Force.
Force, yeah. And fires all across France, I think also in Spain.
Mm,
It's horrible.
I
Yeah.
think the runway problem is they're so hot, the rubber on the airplanes is starting to melt.
Oh,
That can be one of the problems, but they also were showing pictures where runways had collapsed and
Okay.
the
Yeah.
headline, and the story said the runways were melting.
Yeah, asphalt probably.
Yeah. All right. Well,
okay.
be
Good
careful.
presentation, Steve.
Check ahead of time before you land your plane.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
check your brake, Tim.
Yeah. All right. Good night.
Good job.
Good
Good job.
night.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Excellent.